Welcome back to Off the Rak. I'm Walt Rakowich, and I'm truly grateful to have you here as we explore what it means to practice transformative leadership. Now, I've talked to folks with experience in the C-suite, in the boardroom, in professional sports, but now today on the stage and screen, as I welcome Robert Creighton. Bobby's an actor, singer, dancer, composer, writer, and coach. In fact, this interview is right in the middle of one of his Broadway boot camps for aspiring performers. He's performed in so many Broadway productions that I need the entire episode to list them all, like Disney's Lion King, Frozen, Anything Goes, The Little Mermaid, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Chicago, and many, many more. He's had recurring roles on a few television series you're familiar with, like The Good Fight, Elementary, Law and Order, The Family, and Life on Mars. Bobby's had many career highs, including recording an album, co-authoring and starring in his own off-Broadway award-winning musical called Cagney, and earning recognition throughout his career for his dancing and entertainment. But most of all, he's a leader. He's had to persevere to succeed, and he's really, really a good guy. I think we can all learn something from him. Bobby, just want you to know it is great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Walt. So excited, actually, that you asked me. And the good news, bad news scenario is, in preparation for this, and I'd watched one before based on our mutual friend Tommy Spalding's recommendation, but I watched the podcast you did with Tommy, and then I just watched the one with Gary Gilliam.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It just got me all fired up and inspired. On the good side, I'm like, wow, he's got, and Tommy's world-class storyteller, and Gary's this guy who just had to persevere through so much and made the NFL, and now he's doing wonderful things in the world. I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? But I was like, the good news is I was inspired and turned on by those podcasts. And the second part was, okay, he asked, so you said yes, and you're going to do it, even though,
Oh, you're nice to say that. Well,
fired me up.
I truly believe that many of the things that you've had to go through as an actor, performer, and the like can be real wisdom for people in business. I really do. And so it's just awesome to have you on. Really
Thank you. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Okay. So let me kick it off, because I thought it's kind of funny. From your biography, I found that you not only inspired to be the goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but you also wanted to be the next Fred Astaire as a young boy. Okay, so you got to tell me, what experience prompted you to set aside the skates for dancing shoes?
I grew up in a small town in Ontario, Canada, and hockey is like a religious thing for us up there. Mm. And I had two really distinct dreams as a kid. The first one was to be, this will mean nothing to anyone watching this, but Mike Palmateer, who was the goalie when I was very young for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the second was to be Fred Astaire, who I had Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire. I just fell in love with the old movies when I was a very little guy. And so I was passionate about hockey, and I played as a goalie till I was about 13. Had some real glory days, won big tournaments, traveled to things, and played at a fairly high level. Unfortunately, my glory days were like between 7 and 11, so it's like, and then at 13, everybody got big. And even though I feel like I'm, 6'3" inside, my exterior is like 5'6". So everyone got big, and 5'6" on a good day. And so everyone, so the hockey dream sort of died. It died hard, but there was a reality to that. And meanwhile, while I was growing up, I was really into music and like singing, sang in a boys choir from age 7 to 15, learned how to sight read music at 8 years old. Played piano, played trumpet, played all the things. And when I was 14, 15, I did a role, The Artful Dodger in Oliver, in a community theater production about a half hour in a town about a half hour away in rural Ontario, 2 hours northwest of Toronto, where I grew up. And during that show, I really felt a sense that this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. And subsequently I let the hockey dream go. That wasn't, by that time, it was not a reality anyway. It was a kid's dream, but it became clear above everything. And my dad was a family doctor in our small town for 57 years. My mom was a nurse. And P.S., you can imagine how, two really secure career choices. Going to the NHL, my fallback plan was Broadway. So my doctor dad's like, great,
You're
do
set
that.
for life.
Yeah, right. So, but during that show, I made a decision. This is what I'm going to do with my life. I really did at 15, and made all my choices afterwards, sort of with the direction in mind that I'm going to make it to New York. I'm going to make it to Broadway. I'm going to become a working actor, a performer. Didn't even know exactly what that meant, but I just knew that I had this fire in me. This spark was lit. That's what I'm going to do with my life.
That's great. You've played so many great roles. Any favorites?
Oh man, I've been really lucky on Broadway and elsewhere. Because as you said, people would describe me as a character guy. I joke when I do my sometime in my concert, I talk about how when I moved to New York, I thought I'd go down the leading man path. That's where I thought I should go, really. And people said, "Are you going to be a leading man?" But I found the tall, dark, handsome thing really hard to maintain. So I made a conscious choice to play shorter, sort of chubbier sidekick guys, and the career worked out much better. But but I am a character guy. Let's be honest. And so I've had a lot of fun roles along the way. I would say that first one, The Artful Dodger and Oliver, played it when I was 15, and really is when it clicked for me that this is what I want to do with my life. This is God's given me some gifts in this area. It's what I feel like I'm meant to do. Then when I was 19. I did it at a great big theater in Winnipeg, Manitoba, the middle of Canada, 2,000 seat outdoor theater, got my equity card, which means you're part of the union, you become a professional actor. And then I moved to New York and went to, after my music degree in Canada, 3 years of acting school in New York. Coming out of that year after, I played The Artful Dodger at age 25, but I still looked 16. So I played that at a big theater called Paper Mill Playhouse in New Jersey. And it sort of started my journey and being known a bit in the New York area and then in New York and, plugged away from there. So that was an important one. Disney, as you mentioned in the intro, thank you for that lovely intro. Disney, being part of that Disney family has been great for me. I've done 3 of their Broadway shows and been involved in the development of almost all of their Broadway shows in one way or another through workshops and things. And that's a relationship, being part of that family, and playing Timon and the Duke of Wesselton, originating that role in Frozen recently. And it's allowed me to take my family around the world doing concerts, doing a one-night thing where you go as the Disney star on a Disney cruise, and you're 11 days in the Mediterranean. And I work one night in the big theater with a piano player and get paid to go on vacation. I mean, I recognize how fortunate that is, but I'm so grateful for that because it's allowed me to expose my family to many things. And then the last one, my favorite thing is probably playing Cagney because it was a dream come true for me, an idea that started in acting school and that I worked, a couple decades to bring to fruition. We can talk more about that later, but I've been really fortunate in the roles I've gotten to play. I love it. I love it so much. So it's, it's fun for me to be able to do what I dreamed of doing.
I'm very intrigued about the production of Cagney, and I think I'm going to ask you a little bit about that later on, especially as it relates to business, because basically it's like a business. You started it and you acted in it, and it's very entrepreneurial.
It was half business, half making it come true on the business side as well as the acting side. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the one thing that I thought about when I really wanted to interview you was that you succeeded in a career where professionals hear a lot of no's, a lot more no's than yeses, I would think.
Yep, it's true.
I think it would be tough to land a role on Broadway. Are there some practices over the years that you've used that kind of help boost your resilience during this period of time?
Yeah, it is. Not only that I've used, but continue to use, because in a pursuit of this kind of career, it is, and like lots of others, but it is maybe a little more unique in that no matter what level you get to, there is always ebb and flow. It's not like you do, 10 Broadway shows and then, I'll just keep doing Broadway shows. No, you get offered things certainly at times, but it's always an ebb and flow, and requires having, as you say, practices in place to help you sustain your optimism and belief through the ebbs of the ebb and flow, right? And so for me, I thought to myself, as you asked that, there's a song, and I bet you when you have the CEO of Walmart on here, you don't get singing on your podcast, but I'll give you a little chorus of a song if you don't mind, Walt. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. It's called Wrap Your Troubles in Dreams, right? And this is on my album. Well, I'll first tell you when I read these lyrics, I'll tell you after. It goes, when skies are cloudy and gray, they're only gray for a day. So wrap your troubles in dreams and dream your troubles away. Until that sunshine peeps through, there's only one thing to do. Wrap your troubles in dreams and dream your troubles away. Your castles may tumble, that's fate after all. Life's really funny that way. No use to grumble, just smile as they fall. Weren't you king for a day? Just remember that sunshine always follows the rain. So wrap your troubles in dreams, dream your troubles away. So that
Love it.
Thanks, man.
I just want you to know you're the first guest in 3 years that ever sang on this show.
Come on. Well, there you go. Awesome. I don't know if that's good or bad, but there it is.
Great.
So, but when I was making my album, my album, Ain't We Got Fun, is a lot of old time music. And I read those lyrics and I didn't even know yet whether it was going to be a good tune or not. I just read the lyrics and I said, that's going on my album because it said in that song what I believe and what I have used. I realized as I read it and still think about it and talk about it. Those lyrics said what I actually believe, which is wrapping your troubles in that dream. And so for me, I had this dream, and that was very strong and I was passionate about it. And it took me 10 years out of acting school to get my first Broadway show. Right. And worked a lot and did New York City Opera, and I did Lion King in Toronto, but not on Broadway. I toured for a year, but not, and so obstacles come all the time. But if you can keep your eye on the dream, right? Those troubles, you wrap your troubles in that dream that you're looking at. Now, I do recognize how fortunate I am. I'm like in the half of 1% that get to make a living doing what I do, help people who want to do it, right? And it's not because of talent. There's lots of talented people, but I think I'm fortunate because of my parents. It's a whole nother, just being wired the way I am, that when the troubles came, I didn't knock into them and go sideways. Yeah. I kept my eye on the dream and wrapped those troubles as an opportunity to keep moving forward the dream. If someone has a business or a classroom or a not-for-profit or an organization they run or something, and they have a vision of how they want it to be in any of those pursuits, you want to run your class in a certain way, whatever it is, or your family, your home, troubles and obstacles are going to come, and they can either send you sideways or you can look at them as wrap them as opportunities, keep moving towards your dream. Right. And the other great line in that song is sunshine always follows the rain. And I believe it. And that is the thing that I've had to cultivate. I'm lucky because it came kind of naturally to me because of the way my mom and dad were and the way my dad functioned in the world. But I have a motto. If you get an email from me on my phone, it says at the bottom, good things happen. I just believe it. The more you think about good things happening, the more they show up, the more that you're aware when they show up and you're grateful for them, the more they continue to show up. Doesn't mean hard things don't happen, unfair things, unjust, painful things, obviously, because we're all humans, all those things. But if as you're going through them and the rejection in my case, you can remember good things happen, they will. Sunshine always follows the rain.
I love
and
that.
The last one little thing I would share about this, because I think this is the important, I could talk about this the whole time we're together, but I read a book a couple years ago, Michael J. Fox, another diminutive Canadian actor, hockey-loving actor, who wrote in his book, he had a line in it, and when I read it, it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I was reading it in Buffalo, by the way. The pandemic sort of had sent my life sideways, starring on Broadway, 2 years as lead in Frozen, and all of a sudden the world turns upside down, selling my condo, have to decide whether to live there or move. It's another subject, but the line is, with gratitude, optimism is sustainable. And for me, that is the cornerstone of my journey. I know because I've watched your podcast that you're going to ask me at the end about gratitude, but I can't not talk about it here. I can't not talk about it because it is the cornerstone for me. Being grateful for the things, the opportunities I've had the opportunities I've had, being grateful for the gifts that I have, being able to sing and dance and act and do all the things and comfortable speaking to people the way that I'm wired like that. I'm grateful for that because it's allowed me, right? And as things are hard or get harder, it's always possible to find something you're grateful for. And when you're grateful, you can sustain the optimism that good things are coming.
Isn't that the truth? That's I'll tell you what, I just wrote down 4 different quotes, and I'm going to use those quotes over and over and over. That is just fantastic. And I love the sunshine always follows the rain, because you're absolutely right. Keep your head up, compartmentalize the difficulties, because we all have them, right?
Yeah.
And you got to have a vision, and you got to pursue the vision. And
well, I would say compartmentalize at times, and in that, and also use them at times, right?
Yeah, use them. That's right. So, all right. So let's talk about Cagney.
Great.
You know, you wrote, you produced, you starred in, you secured the funding for the Cagney musical. I imagine that's a little bit like running a startup, like we just talked about.
For sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe a learning moment that you could share with leaders or entrepreneurs that you learned in that whole process?
Yeah. The one thing I would offer relative to that question is, so for me, it was a dream that started in acting school. I had a teacher who said, you remind me of Jimmy Cagney. You kind of look like him. You're built like him. I know you're sneaking out to tap dance on the side, because it was a straight acting school like Shakespeare and all the whole thing. He said, I know you like to tap dance. You should watch James Cagney films. You'd like him. I started watching them. Instantly, I felt connected. I'm like, oh my gosh, I do look like him. So this dream started. And then I read a book about his life and how he went through the world. And he lived his life in a way that warranted having a musical written about his life. He stuck up for the little guy, one of the founding members of the Screen Actors Guild, when actors were being, abused by the studios, no matter how, he was making millions of dollars for the studio and getting $350 a week, and walked out on his contract, and then came back and for everyone made a new deal. Supported the defense of the Scottsboro boys way back when, because they weren't getting a proper defense, and he paid money to help them get a proper defense, etc. Anyway, just who he was. I got fired up about it. Created a show about his life, collaborated with a couple other people that helped me, do it. And when I went through lots of stages, did it in Florida first in 2009, a couple of productions the next year, got busy on Broadway, did a reading at a little theater in New York, and they said, we would do it and help you develop it here in this basement in New York, but you have to raise $129,000 yourself. And none of my collaborators were interested in any of the business side of things. And so I'd been the one pushing the boulder up the hill for 20 years at this point. And I said, okay, let's do this thing. And I had a friend who was a producer who I said, I need a little advice on how to do this. And what I learned through that, and what didn't come easily to me, but in talking to my friend Sugi Lad, who's one of the co-lead producers of a musical that just won the Tony, The Outsiders. And I say that only because she was in the early stages then, but she was a business person who loved the theater. Mm-hmm. And she said, you just have to share your story and your passion with people, and know whether it's for them or not, they're not going to mind you. They're not going to mind hearing about it. Mm-hmm. And so when I was scared to pick up the phone, there were a few people. I had 10 investors and raised $129,000. Some of them were family members. Some of them were friends, and some of them were friends of friends that I didn't know. And that was hard to pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to tell you about this thing I'm developing. I have an opportunity to do it in New York, and it's an investment, and it's theater. So you know what kind of investment that is. You're kind of rolling the dice. Mm-hmm. But I just shared my story and my passion and my dream. And not one of them, not everybody invested that I talked to, but not one of them felt bad about it. They all wished me well. And then most people that I talked to got on board in some way or another. And so just being able to make that call and share your passion and your dream, you have to overcome the resistance inside to do it. If I had just succumbed to the resistance, Cagney would never have happened in that little theater. We would have never found our commercial producer, had a 15-month off-Broadway hit in New York, and now be headed towards a Broadway theater. Next year, we're right in line to get a Broadway theater, and that will be I already feel like doing it in New York for 15 months was what I wanted, but that would be like just the multiple cherries on top of the
That's
sundae.
amazing.
So, yeah,
What an
make the call is what I would say, and tell people about your passion. They won't mind. If it's for them, great. If it's not, great.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Share your vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, not only having the vision, but sharing it. Um, so I am curious, but and let's kind of play that out a little bit more. Um, you've had a lot of highs,
Yeah.
but I'm sure you've had some challenging moments to get to where you are today. Um, Needless to say, we talked about Cagney, just starting that up, but just in the roles and all the things you had to do, can you talk about a time when you were kind of particularly challenged and how you dealt with it?
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, when you ask me that, like I can think of a lot, as I said before, there's so much ebb and flow in my business, even when you're on the high of hit show, Cagney, awards in New York, all the fun things and profile. That was a profile change for me in New York, even though I'd done 7 Broadway shows before that, and then going straight into Frozen, all those things, so you're really I was on a certain path there where everything is flowing, right?
Right.
All the areas financially, all the stuff in New York, other opportunities coming from that, et cetera. And then the pandemic hits, right?
Mm.
And a week before they announced Frozen wasn't coming back, even when Broadway reopened, my wife and I sold our condo, and we're about to buy a house in New Jersey that in Montclair, beautiful house that we couldn't quite afford, but everybody's doing great, so let's go for it. And then they announce no job on the other end of it. And PS, in 2 weeks, your income is done. Or 2 weeks, like 4 weeks before that, my income was done, right? With no knowledge of when that might start up again. Mm-hmm. And so now we've sort of, do we start renting and paying thousands of dollars of outflow without the possibility even of income? Mm-hmm. Do we move? We were going to move to LA for a little bit so I could do more TV work, and I have opportunities there. But I have 2 young kids. That's a very selfish decision. Where are we going to live, school? So we moved to Buffalo, my wife's hometown, and rented a house here. And then we bought the house, totally different life here. Family nearby. My kids are going to the school my wife grew up in, which are phenomenal public schools. Kids were in a private school down there that was keeping us poor, but you do what you have to, and it's great, But so now they're in awesome public schools. But it sent I'm sort of on this trajectory, and the pandemic hits. The pandemic is over, in that Broadway is restarted and starting to bubble again. And so when you ask, how has what have I done in the particular difficult times? I would say in the recent few years, moved here September 2020, I have been in a real practice what you preach mode. Right? Because it's easy when you're going from one Broadway show to the next and creating things and doing readings of new pieces and TV show here and to be able to share with people your journey. And yes, there's been lots of ebbs and flows that I could talk about as a young actor, and, working hard, saving my money, taking classes, being without money, but believing another job is coming. It comes. I never worked as a waiter in New York because I always believed there was another acting job coming. I would get right down to ground zero and one would always show up because I believed it. And I was very fortunate that way. But I've been in a real practice what you preach mode at times while I was here. And the thing I would say that sustains me, back to it, is conscious gratitude. That's the phrase I use, conscious gratitude. There's one. Yeah, write that down, Walt. Write that down. I got a copyright beside. I'm just kidding. But I say to people, I practice conscious gratitude now, because it's, when you feel that gratitude, it's impossible to not feel, as I said before, optimistic or hopeful that good things are coming. But it took, my world got shaken up in a big, big way. And so now I find myself, there's been highlights since. I've been back on Broadway as Timon, Lion King, traveled, did part of the tour of Frozen just while the guy playing my role was out having a baby with his wife. And, and I've traveled to do great concerts, Epcot, where I get to, do, doesn't matter, lots of fun things along the way, but I feel out of my world a bit and am having to fight through balancing, not wanting to be away from my family and my kids who are thriving here, and doing what I am passionate about doing. So I'm finding a way to coach people and young people and mentoring and putting that energy into developing other people. And, and then I'm practicing conscious gratitude. I get to assistant coach my son's hockey team. That makes my Canadian heart happy. Like I have this gift of time with my kids where my daughter only knew me during the day. I was the morning guy, but I was gone 5 nights a week doing shows on Broadway. Right. And now I'm home, I'm cooking, I'm doing, so there's so much to be grateful for, even though at times I'm like, how am I doing what I set out to do? The dreams are still there. How am I, managing that? So when you ask about the tougher times, I would say psychologically, it has been a tougher time for me over the last few years at moments,
Yeah, but the pandemic, I think, did that for a lot of different people. But
Yep.
at first it probably thrust you into this adversity, but it's been great to see how you've persevered since then. And actually, there's a silver lining, I think, for a lot of people that has come out of the pandemic, and because it's thrust you into different roles that
For sure.
perhaps you could never have played in the past.
Oh my gosh, you're 100% right. And that's where the gratitude comes in, right? Like the coaching young people and really doing that so much more intangibly, seeing them light up and go from point A to point B with your help. My kids are thriving here. My family's thriving here in a way that is very different. The community we have here. I had my Broadway community, which I loved still and loved going to work, but my family in the community here is something that, my wife really desired and was something that was missing in her life. And now as a family, I am aware of how lucky we are. And it would have never happened had the pandemic not hit, right? So that is, we've been thrust into this other paradigm here, and it's great.
Yep. So let me turn a little bit to how you're paying it forward right now. You're coaching, you're mentoring, you're doing for other people in many respects. And is there one thing that your students or mentees are kind of surprised to learn about building a successful career? Just because there's got to be a big, long series of stressful auditions that they need to go
my gosh.
through. And
yes.
I'm just kind of interested in sort of the way that they think about it.
Yeah. I think that, it's interesting in coaching young people because you want to encourage their dreams as people encouraged mine.
Yep.
And at the same time, because I've been sustaining for 30 years as a professional actor, you want to help them understand the reality of what it means to go down that road fully, right? And you can't dabble in being a professional actor because there are hundreds of thousands of people who want to do it. And there's this many who get to do it. And either you're going to do it or you're not, right? You build your foundation of training, as I tell them, build your foundation of training as wide and as strong as you can. And then you can build your career as high as you want on that foundation. So I talk about that. And I also talk about having something bigger than yourself, right? It's your identity can't be tied to getting the job because auditions, there are so many more no's than yeses that would make your head spin. I mean, that's just the reality of this journey. And you go through periods where it's a lot of green lights and you're getting yes and yes and yes, and things lead to others, and that's great. But no matter what stage you get to, there's always going to be a lot of no's. It just is. And your identity can't be tied to getting the job. It has to be tied to doing the work to prepare and controlling what you can and cannot control and doing great at the audition and stuff. So you never arrive in this business. No one has arrived. It's constant ebb and flow, no matter what stage you're at. Whoever you think the celebrity is that's arrived, he's still or she's still, working towards the next thing.
I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things that I read about in your masterclass is that you try to teach people how to build confidence and conquer their nerves. We all have that. I have that on the golf course, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not in a tournament. is there something our business leaders could borrow from your teachings when they've got to perform in, let's say they've got to perform in front of a town hall, board meeting?
Well, this is one of my favorite subjects to talk about, whether it's with young people or with friends who are in business who have to do exactly what you just described. It's something I've thought a lot about. I think my future side hustle should be like coaching executives who have to give presentations or something, because I love talking about it. I would say a couple simple things just off the top of my head, which are, first of all, when you feel that feeling of nervousness, right, you have to train yourself to realize, oh, that's a good thing. That means this is important to me. So that's the first thought that should come in your head. Oh, not I'm nervous. Oh, I'm nervous. I'm scared of this. What if I miss the putt? What if I, what if I say the wrong words at the thing? No, you feel that because you're about to do something that's important to you. And that's great. That's an opportunity, right? So don't be scared of that feeling and embrace that feeling. Good. It's important to me. Secondly, here's what I share all the time. You talk about having, I'll say butterflies. That's how I said, you get butterflies, right? If you're prepared to the proper level, if you've done the work that you can do, that's the thing you control, those butterflies are going to come. They just are, whether it's for an audition, whether it's for an opening night, whether it's for a presentation, whether it's you have your 5,000 employees at your company town hall and you have to, the nerves are going to come. They just are, right? And if you're prepared and you have already said, oh, good, here they come because it's important to me, then the butterflies are going to come and they're going to lift you in that moment. And you have to believe that if you've done the work, they're going to lift you, right? And if you haven't done the work, if you haven't done the part that you can control, the butterflies are going to come and they're going to weight you down. They have the chance to weight you down. You might get lucky and squeak through, right? But if you haven't done the work and you're not prepared to the proper level, the butterflies will come and they could weigh you down. And this is a new thought I had just recently, Walt, because I've been saying this forever. Feel the butterflies, do the work, prepare, and then they'll lift you in the moment. Or they'll lift you. If you're going into a moment, and I'll relate this to talking to you today, where I watched Tommy's podcast and I watched Gary Gilliam's podcast, and I thought, when I started to get butterflies, like, what am I going to have to offer, right, to you and to the people that you serve, leaders that you serve who are different stages of life than I am or whatever. And I thought to myself, and this is, people feel butterflies going into social situations where they're nervous, right? Or they, like me, going into this situation, I'm feeling, I got a little, oh, good. I feel a little butterflies. Good. First thing, this is important to me. I want to have something to offer. I want to be worthy of you inviting me to take this time today, right? And then, so I would say, if you are your authentic self, which you are prepared to be, right? If you're just living your life and you've thought through things and you recognize and you are your authentic self, then when the butterflies come in a social situation that's nervous, say, just be yourself. Or talk to Walt about the things you've thought about. Don't overthink it. Just be yourself. Then the butterflies will come and you'll be fine in the moment. If you're trying to be other than, if you're not your authentic self, when those butterflies come in a social situation and you're trying to put on an act or be something different than you are, then the butterflies will come and you'll be trying to do this thing, not be your authentic self, and it will suck you down. That's what I would offer to your business leaders. Be your authentic self. And when the butterflies come, you'll fly, and do the work to prepare. And when those feelings come, say, oh, good, it's important to me, and let them lift you.
Wow. Take it from a guy who's performed in front of thousands and thousands of people. I think
it works.
I think that those are great pieces of advice. And I've been writing down, I got a full page worth of quotes for you. I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
So, Bobby, you heard, it sounds to me like you heard a couple of these that I've done in the past. So, that I always ask everybody the last question. It's always the same one.
Yep.
And for you, it's going to be pretty easy based on some of the things that you said. But I do like to ask everybody in my interviews about gratitude. Is there anyone that you're grateful for that you'd like to share today?
I think that, well, as you can tell, that's an important cornerstone in my life, because I need to be, I want and I need to be grateful to sustain my optimism. And I believe that that is the bottom line for most things, right? If you can focus on that, it takes care of a whole host of things. I would say, as you asked me that, I think about my wife, who having a solid home front, right, for me, and someone who sustains who just goes with the flow, the ebb and flows. She believes in me, believes in my talents, believes in who I am as a person. And so she handles the ebbs and flows. If you're with the wrong partner who was like, hey, you made this last year and this year, not so much, if that made her nervous, but she's been with me long. We've been married 15 years in a couple months. And it's going to flow again. I know that. She knows that. I believe it. Or it does in ebbs, but she handles it so beautifully that it allows me to be free to just keep moving forward and going after the dream. So her and my kids, who are awesome. Just because we have a mutual friend, I'll say Tommy Spalding, who you've had on here and who's become one of my best friends, and how you and I got connected. You meet people in your life and who just impact you in a certain way or help you look at things in a different way. When I did the audio book for his Gift of Influence, I did the Audible book, and hard to believe with this voice, I know. But I had to stop at times because you get emotional reading the stories in there, right? And I just feel so lucky to have met him and to have become friends. And we, iron sharpens iron in a way. And so we both offer things to each other in our friendship just because we love each other. But I think I get the lion's share. I'm very grateful for his friendship and that it connected me to you and having this opportunity. So yeah, those are the two things that pop into my mind as you asked me that.
Well, that's great. Well, I just have to tell you that I'm thankful to you. I'm thankful that you joined us on this episode. And I'm also thankful for all of the quotes. Wrap your trouble away in your dreams. Keep your eye on the dream or on the vision. Sunshine always follows the rain.
That's right.
With gratitude, optimism is sustainable. Practice conscious gratitude. Have something bigger than yourself. And when you got nerves, which it's a good thing, embrace it. And if you prepare, those are things that actually can lift you higher as opposed to bring yourself down and be your authentic self. So, I mean, all of those things I've learned today, and they were great lessons. So I'm really grateful for you to share those with our audience. And I just want to thank you for being on.
Well, thank you. Honestly, I felt it was a real privilege to be asked, and this has been wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Bobby. And I'd like to thank all of you who tuned in. You can always find more insights from these conversations in the Off the Rak Plus newsletter. We've got highlights, transcripts, helpful takeaways, and updates on future guests. And we've got a great episode coming up in October with Herman Bowles, who's a retired colonel, real estate and finance executive who serves as the vice chairman of the West Point Association of Graduates. He's dynamite. Herman is an amazing leader, and I think you're going to learn a lot from what he has to say. And so until then, I'd just like to encourage all of you to be human with one another and really find a way to have a positive influence on somebody around you each and every day. Thank you, everyone.